Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. I am your host, Madison Malloy. Yes, we've got another fun episode this week coming at you. I am sitting down with a hilarious comedian, but we are talking everything from dating advice to why porn is damaging our minds to figuring out your sexual style so you can easily communicate it so you're not getting hurt if you're somebody who gets attached, but yet you're with somebody who needs more open relationships. We're talking about dealing with depressive thoughts, how to bring law of attraction into all different areas of your life, best dating advice she's received, any relationship, all that good stuff. So this is a fun podcast. Again, at the Next to Madison show, we are aiming on every episode or with this whole entire show to make you happier, healthier, and wealthier. So that's going to be great. And we will be right back after this brief message with our amazing guest, Katie Boyle, on this episode of Next to Madison. Stay tuned.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. I'm excited to announce that my new book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up, is now available online and in stores. You can pick up your copy today by going to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. This new book is a humorous self-help guide to help you remove the obstacles that are holding you back so you can take things less seriously and live a more enjoyable life. I'm so excited for you to read it. Now back to the show.
All right, we are back with our amazing, hilarious, funny, I know it's the same word, but she's so funny, I had to keep saying it. Katie Boyle, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you. And I didn't mention, but Katie is a comedian, very funny, successful comedian. Well, I already said she was funny. I think I repeated myself 100 times. But she is also the host of an amazing, rapidly growing, popular podcast called The Shift. I was on it to talk about my book. I loved it. It was great. We were at your apartment in New York with your little kitty cat, who I just love to death, even though he swatted me several times. But
that means he likes you.
I guess so. I just hope next time I come over that his nails are trimmed, because I'm sure he'll do it again. But he's adorable. Absolutely adorable. So tell us about your podcast. I was on it. I had so much fun. It's very popular. People love it. So start out by telling us about that show and kind of the inspiration behind it.
So it originally kind of was like a dating relationship anti-shame podcast, because I feel like a lot of people in my generation, and my old co-host, he's like the generation older than me, in Ireland don't really talk about sex. We don't get sex education. So that was kind of the basis of it. And then it sort of turned into like mental health as well, and then just the chat sometimes. But the shift in Ireland would have been slang for like kissing. I don't know if it's still slang for that, because my sister's younger and she was like, we don't say that anymore.
Oh, that I didn't know that. That's hilarious. Yeah. So in Ireland, where you're originally from, people don't talk about sex?
No, I mean, I feel like things are definitely changing. And the country has progressed so much in the last like few years. But yeah, it's not like the way it is in New York City, or there's no like sex education. And it originally was like very Catholic. It's not anymore as so, but it still has a lot of that. Like, even though none of us go to mass, we still have all that like Catholic shame, you know? Yeah. So I feel like, it's strange. Like the country's very, there was a lot of like definitely sexual oppression for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I never even knew that. I think America's taken it a little too far. Maybe we could learn a little bit from the Irish and tone it down just a little bit. I feel like every time you step out or get online, like so much sex is pushed in your face. And I'm trying to tell women, like, don't have sex unless you're in a relationship, because we're just wired differently. Like, we had this whole rise of the feminist movement that was like, you can do whatever a man could do. Yes, when it comes to work, but our bodies are wired differently. So when we have sex, we get more attached, where men are wired to run. Like they've conquered and they run. So it's a tough dynamic. But these sex podcasts are extremely popular.
Yeah, and I think like with my one specifically, like we did always cover like different stuff. If it were like having a sex educator, or even like just talking about different kinks. But like for me personally, like I'm pretty vanilla.
Yeah.
which is fine. And it's like, so we will talk about these things, and I'm happy to have an open conversation about it. But I do think it's important to know yourself what you like, if that makes sense. But I think it's nice
Yeah.
to not shame either. I just know that some people will like think because they'll hear sex podcasts and then they'll think that I'm like, I'll get these like crazy messages from guys. And I'm like, I don't think you actually listen to the podcast, because if you did, I'm very clearly saying like, that just like learning about the stuff, if that makes sense, and having other people talk about their experience. I think things are changing a little bit. I do think, as in, you need to know what you're into. But I know my boyfriend, he's very much like gets feelings when he has sex. And he would be like a bit more effeminate and stuff. But I do think he's coming up in a world where it lets men not be like crazy, like hopefully, but like he doesn't have to be like really masculine or like conquer all these women, which is really nice.
Good. We need
Yeah,
more men like that, right? We need men that are
exactly.
like, hey, I'm good with one woman. I don't need to go and bang every person on the
Yeah.
block.
Or at least honest about it. And I think that's like let's say people will cheat instead of being like, actually I'm just like built for like an open relationship. Or like if you are a woman who's
Yeah.
able to have like I can't, obviously, I'm like, I definitely fall in love when I like or get like strong feelings when I have sex. But
Yeah.
I think it's about knowing yourself, and then not feeling bad if you are someone who is able to do that. Like, like, does that make sense? But don't push yourself in any direction. Just and don't feel bad if you can't do that. So I think that's like with Ireland, there's no like with America, and I say New York when I say America because I know that it's fairly different state to state. But in Ireland, there's no sex education per se for most majority. And that's really bad, because if there's no sex education, you're making it taboo, and people are going out and doing it anyway, but not protecting themselves, or
Yeah.
not knowing about STD. Honestly, if I were, when I was 14 and they had just told me about like HPV and STDs and all this, I would have been like, that would have been, the education would have made me protect myself better. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. You don't want to start it too soon, but you do want to have that conversation. But I think that conversation, that point is for people to know exactly how they're wired. Because
Yeah.
if your friend is wired for more of open
Yeah.
relationships and not getting attached and no feelings and having fun, but you're not, you can't be doing the same thing because you're going to feel sad and shame and attachment. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to have those, to not only know how you're wired, but then also have those conversations with your sexual partners, where I'm wired like you, where I get attached, right? So it's like, I can't have sex unless I have a conversation where I'm like, hey, what are we? Are we going
Yeah.
to both put in this effort? Are we both on the same page? Because this is going to make me feel really shitty. Where
Yeah.
before, I didn't acknowledge those feelings myself nor communicate them. So I always got hurt or was left feeling shameful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the other
No.
thing too, where if you think like, if you're like, oh, I'm just gonna have sex and have fun, and that's great. But if you're saying that but really looking for a partner, then that's a different thing. So it's about like knowing what you want. Because if you're just like having fun with someone who said they can just have fun, but you're in your head thinking, oh, they'll eventually be my partner, you're
No.
just gonna get hurt. So yeah, it's really about knowing yourself and your wants and being okay with
Well,
that.
exactly. And being able to express yourself. I feel like some men or women are afraid to state what they want because they like the person and they don't want to scare them off. Well, they're not free. They're eventually going to go away if they can't handle your truth.
Yeah.
You might as
And
well
another,
just tell the truth up front.
oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Don't waste your time. And another thing too, with the sex education, there is like, I think it's in Norway, they teach kids at 5 how to um about consent, but it's not in a sexual matter. It's like, oh, if you're asking for a hug, ask for a hug, or ask, can I be in your space? And I thought that was really amazing, because it leads into sex education in the future. But I think that should be just like a general, like asking, like, can I hug you? Can I touch you? Can I be in your space?
Yeah, that's great. I like that.
Yeah, me
I
too.
do. Yeah. So is the podcast today still kind of focused on that
It's a lot
topic?
of dating advice, a lot of relationship advice, but sometimes with the guests, it does lead off into different things. But yeah, and a lot of mental health stuff we would talk about as well. But yeah, that's where it kind of came out of, just like relationships in general, all types of relationships.
So what's the best dating advice you've heard on your podcast so far?
You know what? Actually, there was a therapist on, and she said when you're in a relationship and you are focusing too much on, let's say it's like Ben and Michelle are together, but Michelle and Ben are focusing on Ben and Ben's problems and Ben's issues, and you're cleaning Ben's side of the street, but then Michelle's side of the street is getting dirty the whole time because no one's maintaining it. So kind of how like you can't just be like fixing one person in the relationship and focusing all on them. You have to also like look after yourself. So I thought that was a really good analogy.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Exactly. Because I think people can get carried away if one person has more problems than the other. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's always like a balance.
Yeah.
I've told friends that come to me that are having relationship struggles. And sometimes it's usually with somebody who's kind of a piece of shit. And I always say to them, I say, if I treated you this way,
Yes.
would
Oh
you
yeah,
be
that's
my
great.
friend? And they
Oh
said,
yeah.
no. And I go, then why are you tolerating it from that person? You
That's
just
actually
answered your own question.
No, that's such great advice. That's actually something Maddie Smith was saying last week, not even in regards to that, but we were talking about how even just like you could date someone that you would never be friends with. That's like, which is crazy. You know,
I,
you could date
I
someone and
know.
then you'd be like, if you looked at this person, if you just met them at a bar and you were attracted to them, you'd probably never be friends with their actual personality. It's wild, isn't it?
No, it's true. It's absolutely true. And that's why like I have a lot of like male friends and I love them to death, right? But I would never date them
Yeah.
because we kind of like connected as friends. And I always tell them I would never date you because I love you too much to hurt you. Or I like you, I respect you too much. And they're like, what? But yeah, I think it is very, very important. But they always say if you're gonna have a really good relationship that you have to be friends first.
Yeah, I think friends is the because it's I remember my aunt saying like you have to make sure it's someone that you like because you're not always going to love them. You know, you're going to fall in or things you're going to help in, sex stuff or whatever. But if you're going to have a partner, it has to be someone that you like, like that you actually think they're like a kind and good person. And so I definitely think having a friendship basis is great. Yeah. I
Yeah,
also,
no.
I also think when you date a friend, it's not like passion. It's like I don't know, like it's like little fires. So it grows, the fire grows. But when you meet someone out and it's like this passion, and it tends to burn out very quickly. But I think that the love that grows is the one, and I think people throw that away very quickly, like, oh, second date was kind of boring, and it's like they're used to this like trauma bonding or like excitement and passion. And I think that those things actually like in healthy relationships open up slower, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right because the problem is we have all these social media platforms and TikTok's the worst, right? You go on and everybody's slinging some sort of advice, right? We're not looking at if they have a PhD, if they're a
Yeah.
therapist, whatever, but there's like all these like videos that show up and this girl, I forgot what her name is, but they're like how to manipulate men. And I'm like, that is such dark negative energy. Skip. And then it's like how to make somebody obsessed with you. And it's like if you look at this advice, you're like, this is such toxic, dark behavior. It's like, how about if somebody's just meant for you, it'll happen. And the ones that
Yeah.
don't work out, it'll be. But then I have friends that are like, if you don't know if you're gonna marry them by the second date or the first date, like they're not for you. And it's like you're getting so many things pounded in your head that I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm done. I'm fucking
Yeah.
done. I have no issues in my life. I got no drama. I got nothing. Why? Because I got no relationship with a man that way. And I'm like, every time I have drama or I'm stressed or I'm sad, there's some sort of dude involved. I'm like, I'm at the point where I'm done. If God wants me married, he will drop the guy on my doorstep. I'm
Yeah.
done. I've had enough. Had enough. I don't want to look at my phone and be like, huh, why did they take 5 hours to respond? That's weird. Well, that's a
Yeah.
dead sign that you're probably not a priority.
I think all the advice is probably wrong, which you're right. I think there's a lot of stuff we're taking in that's like generalized advice, but it's actually like unique to a lot of people and situations and what they want. Like, do you might need someone to reply in 5 hours, someone else might need it in 30 minutes, someone else might not give a shit if it's a day. So it's like it all depends on what need me. Like it's so individual. And then the other thing is well, how to manipulate people is crazy because
Oh, I'm like,
that's like
jeez.
it's like you should have enough like security in yourself that you can have someone that you don't need to manipulate them into being with you. And even then it's like you're not God, you're not like a goddess or whatever, you're not like an all-powerful being that you should need to manipulate. Because if your partner is saying something like, oh, you did something wrong and that hurt me, you should look at yourself and be like, well, what did I do and how do I get better? But the only reason why people want to manipulate is because they always want you to be in the wrong and you in control, like in control of you, and get you to do what they want. So that's like the worst. Oh my God, I hate manipulation.
Yeah. So, ladies and men, if you're on TikTok or social media and you're seeing these videos, skip over them or hide them so they stop getting as much attention, because it's just negative energy that is really being like fueled. You should never manipulate anyone. It's a very evil, evil thing
Yeah.
to do.
I
But also, like, have you? I think another thing with like dating and success is like your mindset.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're feeling like, oh, every relationship I get, because maybe I'm a little bit this way right now too. Every man I meet is a disappointment. Every relationship doesn't work out. I'm sick of getting hurt. I don't want to deal with the drama. But that was, and I recognized it. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit of like a negative loop. I'm just gonna be attracting more of that to me. So that's why I'm like done with dating, because I want to take a break and identify what is causing those
Yeah.
thoughts and then trying to change them.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes complete sense. It's like a nice reset, like a nice
Mm-hmm.
little like break rehab of it. Um, I would say it's definitely what you put out, what you attract. Like I dated so many like abusive guys, but I if I'm honest, I wanted to date them because I know how to handle them. I know how to like be in that role because it fit like my childhood, and it was like exciting and it was like drama, and it never was, these were like things that I had to be like, okay, why do I keep attracting the wrong guy? And because nice guys are a little boring and they don't have issues and we can't trauma bond. So I had to like rechange how I thought and try to actively date nice guys and give them a couple of dates, because nice guys
Yeah.
actually take a second to open up. And I think that road led me to my boyfriend. So
I think that's very there. It's very well said. Yeah, I don't want a bad guy. I want like a nice boy who's not going to make me question things. I just want somebody who's like easy, who's on the same page. Um, yeah.
yeah. And with nice guys too, I think also the problem with our generation is or in the future generation, I'm always confused what generation we are in, but like with all people living now, um is that you want your partner to be everything. And Esther Perel said that they can't be everything. So like when you meet someone who's nice and you might be like, oh, but they don't like to go out and dance the way I dance. Well, fucking go out with your friends. You don't need to be with each other all the time. Or
Yeah.
if it's a guy and he's like, well, I really want a girlfriend who likes football. And it's like, well, if she's ticking all the other boxes, that's fine. Watch football with your friends. So we can't expect them to be everything. And even when it comes to sex, like, oh, you might be like, well, like I like a bad guy. And there was this one, she's a sex therapist, Dr. Bat Shava, but she was on my podcast and she said like how okay, so you might have a nice guy and that's not what you're usually attracted to, like a bad guy. And she's like, yeah, but you bring that into the bedroom. Like you you change that scenario so he's the bad guy. Tell him what you want, get him to do it, get him to be like a little more aggressive, or if you like, if whatever you like, just communicate that and try it. So don't
That's
just
well said. Yeah, because you
yeah.
could once you're behind the bed and he's a nice guy, you can be like, listen, tie me up, bitch. Like I like it rough. What you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Nice guys are usually going to do whatever you want, actually. They're pretty chill. They're pretty like, okay, whatever pleases you. They're just not going to do it without your permission. That's the thing. It's like, oh, well, he doesn't choke me. Yeah, because you didn't tell him. That's actually strange that those other guys would choke you without your permission. You know?
I know, and it's kind of frightening. Like I haven't really had that like people putting their hands on my neck. Like I think if somebody did that without asking, I would be like, "Am I in a Lifetime movie?" Because
Yeah, yeah.
this looks like a Lifetime script.
I have a whole bit about it, but when it happened to me, I thought the guy was trying to murder me. I got such a fright because I never had heard. I just moved over from Ireland. I didn't know that that was like a sexual kink, and that's the thing. People talk about things so openly here. So you guys have a bit of a no. I had no idea. I got the biggest fright of my life.
Well, Yeah, I mean, it would be absolutely frightening if you're just like, oh God, what's happening right now? Like this is
Yeah.
not normal. And there have been stories where people got a little out of control and ended up killing the other person.
Yeah, and like that's the thing, like, and that would be to me considered a kink. And if you're into different levels of kinks, that's always okay, but that needs to be a conversation and it shouldn't be expected. And I think because of maybe like nowadays with like porn and stuff, maybe people are, I'm not like against porn or whatever. I have no serious opinion on it. Other than just everything in what's that word? Moderation. um, um,
Yeah.
but I do think that there is a fear that young women are going to think that they have to be choked to, you know what I mean? And then young men are thinking that they have to choke. And it's like, nah, lads, bring it back down, bring it back to the basics, and then you can build up to that as you get comfortable and get to know each other. But yeah, it is a scary how there's a base level now of a bit of maybe dangerous sex. I don't know.
Yeah, and let's talk about porn because more articles have come out. So I started noticing them at the end of 2022 and really now into 2023 about the dangers of porn. It's not just the unrealistic things that are happening on the screen that people are trying to recreate. It's somehow all these scientific studies like it kills your brain cells, it decreases
Jesus.
your motivation, um it like desensitizes you. So it's
Mm.
like a horrific thing to actually watch. So it's kind of like when people watch all these like horrible, horrific murder shows or movies, right? Like I remember when I first saw my first Halloween movie, I couldn't even look up. I was like, oh my God, this is so scary. And then as I started watching more, like during Halloween, I started to be like, like I noticed myself becoming desensitized to what was happening on the screen.
Yeah.
A, because I was more mature and I knew that it was a whole movie set and everything was fake and blah blah blah. But you should still like I think the same thing's happening in porn is that all of a sudden you're like, oh, sex with multiple people, sex doesn't mean anything, blah 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 blah. And then people are just having sex and then all of a sudden they're like, well, why am I so depressed, or why am
Hmm.
I so unmotivated, or why am I so sad, or why do I not have a desire to go out and connect with somebody on like an emotional level? Well, it could be the fact that you're watching the porn. So the whole thing is like, shut off the porn, shut it off.
Yeah, I think like with horror movies, you don't watch one every day. And I'm sure there's some random listener who's like, well, I do. And it's like, okay, but that's not, that's
If
like,
that's you, please let me know who you are because I need to find you some new hobbies and I want to have you on
yeah.
my podcast.
And like a horror movie is like fun every few months. You get your popcorn and stuff like that. But that's the thing where it's like porn every single day. And like I know a few guy friends, one specifically who was saying like he'd wake up and like watch porn straight away. But then he was like it put him in like a weird mindset for the day because sex was the first thing on his mind. And since he's quit, it's like and he even said since he's quit, he'll like go back like like once every 2 months or something. So it's not like he's totally but he's having a much healthier relationship with it. And I think that's it's like you have to be very like um be careful because I have other guys, friends who said they couldn't come during sex because of porn, because they were like what they were watching on porn was so unrealistic in the bedroom and it was really
Yeah.
affecting them. So they were also talking about potentially quitting. I don't know if they ever did, but yeah. And I know for
And
me, I never watched porn until being in a relationship, and me and my partner, like, we lived together, and he suggested watching it, and it was like a fun thing to do together when your sex life is like, okay, let's like spice this up a little bit, okay, but
yeah.
it's like so new to me that I'm not desensitized by it, and we've only done it like a handful of times, and that's like I think that's like a fun thing if you're in a long-term relationship. And we
Yeah.
found like a nice couple too, who are like they're a couple who do it and they're like married and stuff. And it's like that's kind of fun. Does that make it feels like I'm not it feels like you're not
Oh.
watching
Okay,
someone
so
who's like,
yeah.
yeah, it's not like someone who's being taken advantage of or whatever. Cause yeah, cause some of it it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's a little scary and yeah. But at least with that person, it's like, okay, they chose to do it, they're a couple, they're the ones getting the money from this. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. And the other thing too is like I think with the porn thing is that if you're so used to seeing that visual in order to get off, like when you're with your person,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're not present anymore because you need those images that you were seeing on the screen to be able to get to that level. And that's a dangerous thing too, because when you're not
Yeah.
present, it's like what's going on?
Yeah, no. Caitlin Plufa has a fun joke about it where she says, I think this is how she says it, but something about how men like break their penis from watching so much porn that by the time women figure out their vagina, do you know it's kind of like off because it takes so long for women to figure out what they like that
Yeah,
men are like, I can only come to it. And she had this whole like crazy scenario, but I thought it was like a very true joke to life. But yeah,
that's
I think it's just moderation. It's like you shouldn't drink every night. You shouldn't smoke weed every night, and people do. And I'm not.
yeah.
I don't think that's healthy for them. Everything that people do all the time is not healthy for them. Even
No,
stand up, and we have to do it all the time. But
I know when you're like trekking out at, I'm not doing as much now, but like when I remember the days when you would, you needed to clock a certain amount of sets per
yeah,
week is what it felt like. And it's like you didn't have to clock anything. What I
yeah, that
learned
was
from
also addiction.
yeah, and what I learned from stepping back was that you could do 10 sets in a week, but if you weren't working on new material, rehashing what didn't work, blah 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 blah, you might as well have done one or two sets because you
Yeah,
didn't grow. So it's all about like the growing and what makes you happy and yeah, in moderation. That's why I would like, still have my social life, only do sets on certain nights so I could not go crazy and
yeah,
get too involved in all the drama.
yeah.
But comedy was great. There's so many amazing things, so many amazing people, the laughter, the road, the experiences. I'll never trade that for anything. It led me to
Yeah, same.
exactly where I was, the book and all that, and the more's coming out. But what do you like? You're in the grind. You're like a popular comic. You're like the next. When's your Netflix special coming out? I feel like that's around the corner for you.
Well, we did make a special and we're editing it. So we'll try to pitch it to somewhere, but if not,
Yes.
it'll go on YouTube. So either way, it's we'll see. But yeah, that's the next thing is a special somewhere. But yeah,
Yes.
no, it's like yeah, no, it's good. I do love it a lot. I do think there is times where you have to be like, okay, I'm overthinking or I'm letting this give me anxiety and stuff. And same with as yourself when I took a step back and was like, I don't need this to be like obsessive. That's actually when I got better. And when I started taking more breaks, I feel like I got better as well. Just having a healthy relationship with it. Like I still work a lot,
Yeah.
but I think I was like insane before the pandemic.
Well,
With
I
the
think
levels.
yeah, and I think there's this like thing in comedy where everyone's kind of trying to outdo each other and everybody's posting their stuff on social media. Hey, I'm doing a show here, da 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 da. So it's like you were just trying to clock the quantity, you were doing the
Mhm.
quantity and not the quality.
Yeah,
And I
yeah. I
think the
also
pandemic let a lot of comics realize like, hey, I
yeah.
don't have to do
Yeah, you're not
this
in a
to be as
competition
good.
with anybody. Just all
Exactly.
and also like I think for me I was in a competition with myself or like just running away from like thinking or whatever. Just, I feel like people who are really hardworking sometimes, and that's great, but it also is like, okay, well, why do you feel like you need to work all these hours of the day and you can't be alone with your thoughts? And I'm glad I
Yeah.
put in all that work so that I am a good comedian now, but I'm still like, I also went to therapy and was like, okay, I need to figure out what I'm running from, basically. But what was I gonna say about the oh yeah, my dad always says this thing, like if you worry about spot like if you worry about money, money won't come. And
It's
so I
yeah,
take that
everybody.
attitude with like
Yeah.
spots. So it's like if you have like a low week, I'm like, if I worry about it, it's just there's no point. And I feel like there is that weird desperate energy, like when you really want a boyfriend and you don't get one, and then when you are the way you're being now, it probably means God probably will send the mailman is gonna come to your door.
Okay,
you know?
I'm not a gold digger, but I don't want the mailman. Okay. Can we raise it a little bit? Nothing's wrong with the mailman. I love the mailman, but come on here. Yeah, no, it is so true. Yeah, because I remember like I wasn't dating for a while, and then when I was back in New York when I did your show for the book, I was like, oh, I might as well put myself back out there. I'm on the coast I want to eventually be on, like blah. And I met some good people, I met some bad people, but nothing like really worked out. But the benefit was I got kind of put myself back out there, kind of got it's something like dating's like a skill. Kind of have to like do it. You know what I mean? You have to like iron those like getting on
Yeah.
stage. If you haven't been on stage for a while, you're a little cold on your feet. So, and then there were things that I needed to still learn. And now I'm like, okay, those were like the last things I needed to learn. And now I'm just like, no, I don't want to go out. I don't want to do my hair. I don't want to have small talk with some stupid stranger. I'll buy my own dinner.
Yeah. Well, for you, I
But
know
maybe
like
I do. I don't know. If the right person comes along, I am all about it. But I'm not going to go
yeah.
searching high and low because I don't want to get hurt anymore, and I don't want to deal with the drama.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
but also for you, like I know my friends who are like very religious, they've found their partners within like religious spaces. So like I know my
Oh.
friend, he recommended like, going to like church events and stuff like that and meeting someone like that. Have you ever thought about doing that?
No. Well, it crossed my mind, and then I thought, I'm gonna have to find a really cool church event because I'm a Christian with a naughty mouth. They're gonna be like,
But yeah,
that girl's really sweet, but she says fuck a lot.
yeah. But you never know because I know Ashley, I wonder how she met her, Ashley
Yeah,
Austin Morse.
I
And
know. He's adorable. She's adorable. They're so freaking cute. I think that was a pretty quick turnaround too.
yeah, and they're both religious. And I think that's another thing too, like, if you are like whatever your morals are, they should align. I think
Yeah.
that's already narrows down the bracket. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder if she met him at a cool Christian event or something.
I don't know. I gotta ask her. I know I
Yeah.
should show up to where I'm like, listen, I have a really big heart. I love Jesus, but I also like dirty language. That's just me because God loves us all. Read chapter 5 of my book, Time to Step into Your Faith. It explains everything. They'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is that. Yeah, it's true. I like the law of attraction thing in anything you do. When you're desperate, you know. But let's talk about depression because a lot of comedians either become depressed or go into comedy because they are depressed. I was one who became depressed. I didn't know I had depression until I became an artist.
Yeah.
Um, and you've dealt with your own struggles as well. So how do you stay positive and moving forward when the depression kind of hits?
I think with my because mine was from before, but I think with comedy, it gives you such a thrill that it's like a antidote for a second, but then that can be hard to like chase that, the only
Yeah.
time you feel happy is like truly happy is on stage. And that's something as well comedians will have to come to terms with because that's probably going to be real that's like it gives you so much happiness, to be on stage or
Yeah.
to kill.
Yes.
I think for me, the biggest thing was just knowing it passes. And that because it does, it always passed. And
Yeah.
anytime I thought like really like suicidal or dark thoughts, just knowing that it would pass and then it does, and then you're so happy that like, you're like, oh, thank God I remember that this is just it's kind I always say it's like you're in emotional prison and you just have to do the time. You might not have done a crime, but you just have to do the
Yeah.
time and just
Uh-huh.
sit in it and it will. And I think in America there's this big push to be happy all the time and to get over things quickly. And I think there's a lot of pressure on people to be just like happy
Yeah.
and take all the pills and whatever works for you. But I don't think we're all going to be happy all the time. Like for me, I wake up in the mornings feeling depressed and then I just go back to sleep and I sleep it off. And that's not going to work for everybody because they're not a comedian and they might have a day
I was
job.
gonna say they gotta go, they gotta get up. But
But yeah, if you have but you also need to make sure you don't oversleep. So having the cat is nice because he doesn't really let me sleep past 11, which is good. So I can
11, oh
meow
my
in my
God,
face.
I've been up for 5 hours already.
Yeah, no, I have to. I'm just not a morning person, and that's another thing. That's like it's like specifically for women, they actually technically should get 8 to 9 hours sleep, and then it's like whatever in your genes. If you're more of like a midday or a nighttime person, if you're trying to put yourself on a morning schedule, or vice versa, you're just already not going to be. So I feel like yeah, getting your schedule. There's things I could still do. Like I think about this a lot. Like if I exercised, but do I? No, but I do know. Like I'm sure that helps. People say it helps a lot, or just
It
like
does.
eating better.
It
Yeah,
does. I've been lifting like a freaking mad woman and
yeah,
I feel so much better. And
yeah.
I can eat more because I'm lifting so heavy. So definitely I would say work out, even if it's just taking a really long walk or hitting your 10,000 steps a day. Strap one of those meters on your wrist and go to town. And New York's easy for that. So at least you're getting somewhat of the exercises. But what you were talking about with the thing of being happy all the time, there's now a term for it. It's called toxic positivity.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
real thing. Everyone's like, be happy, be happy. I was just dealing with this morning before this podcast. And I'm somebody who wrote a self-help book, feel like I've got 98% of my life figured out. It's the relationship part that's missing. You know, but I know like when they come and tricks to do and things I use in the book, but like, it doesn't mean I'm not going to get depressed. Do I suffer from depression? Not anymore. But this morning I started to feel really down. And then when you have one thought that makes you feel down, then the next thoughts make you feel down, and you're all of a sudden you're lower. And then I just said, okay, stop. And I immediately texted a friend. And I think that you should text a friend to make plans, not to dump on them.
Yeah.
Because now you've given yourself something to look forward to. And then I immediately went into stating out loud all the things I was grateful for my dog, the roof over my head, all the opportunities I have, the people's lives I've changed through the book, the podcast, friends. And then it would kind of, the sadness would come again. And then I just kept going and going and going, and then it just passed. So that's a good trick too that you can use. It's just like go into like a serious gratitude and don't stop until that thought's gone.
Yeah.
Because it's quick. Because it's like, it's fine to feel sad, and everybody feels sad at times. Like you just can't stay there.
Yeah. And I also think like, what are the reasonings for being sad or whatever? Like if you're sad, because a lot of times, sometimes you can't explain it, or it's like a past thing and you have to work out in therapy, or you're just like, okay, I'm just, sad for fear. And especially if you've been drinking the night before, like if you're fearing the next day, that's just a fear. It's going to be gone in a few hours. But that feels very similar. Like I don't like drinking because of that. But I do think, like, I had a friend text me today, like complaining about comedy and like not getting something or whatever. But I think so, whatever job you're in, and if you're annoyed, you're not at a certain level or you're not getting something, being annoyed and being frustrated is actually stopping you creating or performing better, because you're just focusing on this huge negative. And if you just remind yourself, like, I'm doing this because I love it, and like, what else would I be doing, and like I just need to keep like having fun and creating, then it like sets you, and it's like a better mindset. So I think a lot of time as well is changing how you're looking at things as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it all comes down to like your mindset. And I remember when I felt sad today, I pinpointed it. I was like, I allowed certain people to not treat me, men, the way I want to. Why did I allow that? I was kind of beating myself up about it, like, no more, I'm done, blah, blah, blah. And then I think I'm somebody who is wired to always have vacations planned.
Yeah.
That is how I'm wired. I've identified it. I'm a planner. I need something to look forward to, and it can't just be a huge project coming out. It has to be a getaway.
Yeah.
It has to be something. So I was trying to figure out when I could get away to the warm for a weekend.
Nice.
Struggling with people's schedules, struggling with like, what are the costs of it, blah, 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 blah. And that's what was making me feel sad. And then I was like, get over it. There'll be plenty of vacations to take.
Yeah. But at least so that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember in New York, I didn't exactly identify it. And all of a sudden I'd be sad. And then I'd make weekend plans to escape the city. And I'd feel happy. And I'm like, is the city making me depressed? Like, I think it was. And I kept saying, I'm like, I think there's something in my apartment that's literally draining me. I'm always tired here. I feel sad here. When I'm away in the burbs in Greenwich or visiting friends in Jersey, whatever, I felt happier.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I think it was just I always needed something to look forward to. So I'm the type of person is when I get home from a vacation, I have to start planning the next one.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's great to know that,
Yeah, I know. So I probably have to tell future partners that, be like, hey, I'm a planner. If you're not so much of a planner and you can't make plans in advance, this is not going to work at all. Like, I had a guy that was trying to date me, and he was like, literally, he's like, I don't know what's going to work. I'll let you know 2 days before. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. My schedule will be filled because I make sure it's filled. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
sorry.
and you're dead right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, and if I'm buying a plane ticket, it's got to be a month in advance because they're expensive.
yeah,
Like, end of story.
yeah.
Like, there's no more like this last minute. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't vibe with me. I don't think so. But yeah, it's like you have to know that for sure. So can you think of one of the funniest thing that's ever happened to you on stage?
I don't know. Even when you said that earlier, I was trying to think. I can't think of anything like other than random like crowd work, or I'm trying to think, was there was one, well, that's not funny. I'm trying to think like, yeah, I don't know. Honestly, it's just like all fun, and people say things to me all the time that are just so bizarre. I get a lot of like
Yeah.
these clips because there's something about my face that people like can say the wildest things, and I that sometimes happens on stage. I'm about to post a clip about a guy. I said like, "What have you been doing since you moved over?" And he was just like masturbating, but I thought I heard it wrong. So I was like, "Oh my God, I thought you said masturbating." And then he was like, "I did say that." And I was like, "What is going on?"
Oh
So
my
I feel like
gosh.
I have a lot of incidents like that, or just hecklers, but yeah, not anything. I don't know why I can't think of a good example of the funniest thing that's
I think
happened on
mine
stage.
was I actually legitimately somehow, I don't know what I drank before, I belched on stage right into the
Oh,
microphone as loud as could be, not even on purpose. Literally, I was like, "Blah," and it was so funny. I couldn't even finish my set. I was laughing so hard. And everybody else
that's
was too. They're
amazing.
like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And
No,
then
that's
when I stopped laughing, I go, and ladies and gentlemen, this is why I'm single.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I've like tripped over mics and nearly fell off the stage and stuff like that. But yeah, nothing too major yet. But I feel like something's gonna happen now. We've set it into the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, funny stuff is good stuff though, not bad stuff,
Yes,
but it's always
absolutely.
the funny stuff. And so is your inspiration for your material mostly come from like growing up in Ireland and your family?
Yeah, I guess my family is a big part of it. And then just like anything, I feel like my boyfriend, just yeah, being Irish in America,
Yeah.
um, uh, coming here, seeing different cultural differences, and so kind of like all of it, really, to be honest. I never really know. Like, if I can't sit down and write. If I were to try to sit down and write, nothing comes out. But like if I have an idea and I write on stage more. So I am like one of the type of comedians who needs more stage time just to figure out
Yeah.
a bit. Um but yeah, so I think it's more like, yeah, just like telling stories, like obviously stand up, but I do feel like Ireland is a very storytelling country and has been traditionally. We've always had like a form of entertainment was a storyteller, was a job and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's kind of just, yeah, stories of my life, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And you're very funny. Like definitely you guys go follow her. Tell everybody your socials, your podcast name, your website, all that good stuff.
It's at Katie Boyle Comic, everywhere. So my website is Katie Boyle Comic, my Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube now as well, because I finally got a studio for the podcast. So I've been putting up those on YouTube, which is nice.
Yay!
I know, it's cool, it's fun. And yeah, so that's it. Katie Boyle Comic on everything.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you guys definitely check her out. She is hilarious. Thank you for coming on to the show. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
thank
I'm
you.
so
Thank you
glad
for
to,
having me.
yeah, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's out there listening, wherever you may be. I appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, all that good stuff. It helps us keep putting this content out there. So we'll see you next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@next2madison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.